Nearly 200 years ago, our founders built an institution that brought world culture and history to a diverse population of immigrants with the hope of creating better neighbors, a better city, and a better country. Founded in 1823, the Brooklyn Apprentices Library had the mission of providing educational materials to all people for free. And that morphed into the Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences. When Brooklyn was a city in its own right, they decided that we needed a museum worthy of Brooklyn's wealth, her position, her culture, and her people. They wanted it to be one of the great museums to rival those of Europe. My name is Molly Seegers, and I'm the archivist of the Brooklyn Museum. I love working in the archives of the museum because I get to work with researchers to help them explore our institution's history, learn about the people who worked here and the decisions that they made, and also get to see how what we've done in the past affects what we're doing today. From the beginning, Brooklyn Museum has simultaneously had a contemporary and worldly scope of art that we collect and exhibit. We supported American artists as they were creating their art. In 1926, we showed the International Exhibition of Modern Art before MoMA was even founded. Then we, beginning in 1900, expanded our collecting scope worldwide. We proactively created an Asian art collection and collecting many African works and displaying them in 1923 as art, not artifacts. Beginning in the 20th century, our departments have defined what museums need to be doing. Our conservation department was the first scientific conservation department to be in a museum.
For 30 years, the Brooklyn Museum has crusaded for care.
Our education division has always been central to the work of the museum. It's a continuation of our founding mission. For well over a century, timely and forward-thinking performances, concerts, lectures, discussions, demonstrations, and classes have brought the public through our doors. Our local community has contributed not only to moving us forward, as in the case of the opening of the Community Gallery in 1968, but also forging generative partnerships. We have strived to continuously grow to be more accessible and inclusive, and as diverse as the community we serve. Speaking out, showing daring art, and having courageous conversations isn't new to the Brooklyn Museum. We've been doing this for nearly 200 years.
In the summer of 2018, French artist JR and his team spent a month roaming all 5 boroughs of New York City, parking their 53-foot-long trailer truck in numerous locations and taking photographs of passersby who wished to participate. Each was photographed in front of a green screen, and then the images were collaged into a New York City setting featuring architectural landmarks. More than 1,000 people were photographed for the resulting mural, The Chronicles of New York City. The participants chose how they personally wanted to be represented and were asked to share their stories, which are now available on a free mobile app. Much faster this way. The wait for the elevator was way too long. Social distancing and all of that. We begin our top-down journey on the 5th floor at the Luce Center for the American Art. Along this wall, we find a fascinating exhibit, traditional European paintings reimagined as portraits of women of color. The City and the Rise of the Modern Woman. In the urban environment, women experience new financial independence and freedom. After gaining the right to vote in 1920, young women increasingly entered the workforce. For the first time, a small number of women, often new immigrants who had first-hand experience of artistic innovations in Europe, became industrial designers. They drew inspiration from machine-age materials and streamlined design. Diego Rivera's Copali takes its name from the Nahuatl and Spanish words for copal, the aromatic tree resin employed for centuries in Mesoamerica as incense. In this exhibit, we find examples of interior design, both furniture and complete rooms, going back as far as the 1880s to today. Now, this piano used to have recorded music playing and the keys would press. That was part of the exhibit, but I guess they turned that part off now. Still interesting regardless. This is the big ballroom. Danced a few different dances here and different theme party nights. They had waltzes, they had Caribbean. Really cool spot. Now we're seeing from below what we saw from above. What is Africa to the black artist for whom transatlantic slavery profoundly altered a cultural connection to the continent? In A Sidelong Glance, John Edmonds explores this question through a photographic practice that centers on African sculptures, highlighting their position as complex sites of identity, power and artistic ingenuity. In ancient Egypt, a tomb was not simply a place for the burial of remains, but rather the site of quite literal rebirth. Here, the individual soul was born again into the afterlife. But surprisingly, the ancient Egyptians believed that to make this rebirth possible for a woman, it was necessary that she briefly turn into a man in order to conceive the fetus of her reborn self. Well, there was once a cafeteria here, but due to the closings and restrictions, all we have now are the vending machines. So this is the pathway towards the main lobby hall area. Wait, look, the restaurant is here, the Norm. But, like I said, she's closed. Oh, well. And now we are about to make our exit from the museum. This is how we go out. And this is how we make our way out. Out into the fresh, wet air. Okay, folks. That's our tour of the Brooklyn Museum. I hope you enjoyed it, found it interesting.